Welcome to the Marriage Steps Podcast, where reducing the divorce rate one marriage at a time is the goal, and following my 6 marriage steps is a path to help get us there. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, licensed psychologist and marriage counselor. This show is for your marriage, so call 303-596-6836 with your questions for me or suggestions on topics you think I should cover. You also can email me at info@drwyattfisher.com or message me on Facebook at facebook.com/Dr. Wyatt Fisher. No dots, no dashes. Today I'm going to talk about 10 ways to end the sexual scarcity standoff that so many couples find themselves in. So the majority of marriages, as I'm sure you know, have one partner who has a low libido, that's typically the woman, and a high libido partner, which is typically the male. Libido is tied to testosterone. Females have testosterone, but on average, they have much lower levels than males. Therefore, on average, they have lower sex drives. Normally, when a couple is first dating and first married, the sex drives are pretty even. But after about 18 months, the libido for the female tends to go down to that lower level, and then it creates a problem on average because she doesn't desire sex as often, the husband desires sex much more, and it creates tension. And unfortunately, a lot of couples fall into this pattern of scarcity, this spirit of scarcity, where they start feeling like, well, my bucket's not full, so I can't fill yours, or I'm not going to fill yours. So if you're in a marriage and you're listening to this, and it's the other way around, just reverse my advice. So some of you listening, you may be a female listening, and you may have the higher libido in your marriage. So if that's you, when I speak to guys, I'm just apply that advice to you, and vice versa. So the spirit of scarcity happens when, for example, if the woman, if her need for that emotional connection, which is usually the number one need for most females, is feeling emotionally courted and emotionally connected and cherished, most women crave that and need that before they feel open to the sexual connection. So the spirit of scarcity for a woman usually is they don't feel like there's enough emotional closeness or connection or affection, and therefore they're not open to the sexual. So that's their scarcity standoff. I can't give you that sexual piece because emotionally my bucket's not full. That's what a lot of women say. I've heard a lot of women say that in my practice. The vice versa, if we flip that around for the man, usually the standoff for the man is my sexual bucket is so low, my sexual needs are so unfulfilled that I can't give you the emotional connection that you want, talking to his wife. I can only provide you the emotional nurturing and the emotional connection and the affection if you fill up my sexual bucket. And there we have it, the perfect standoff. Who's going to go first? Who's going to fill up each other's bucket? And we have this spirit of scarcity. But instead of a spirit of scarcity, we want to move towards a spirit of generosity, where we outdo one another, where we try to fill up one another's bucket more than ours is filled, and we try to see how much we can maximize giving to the other person in the area they need love the most. That's their ideal heart in a marriage to really make it successful, is a spirit of generosity. I'm going to outgive you. Imagine if couples immerse themselves in that mentality. I'm going to outgive you in the area that you need the most to feel loved. I'm going to outdo you. Because that is contagious. You start outdoing and outgiving in the area that your spouse needs to feel loved the most, and it's going to come back at you. They're going to want to then outgive you. So the spirit of generosity is the ideal heart, not a spirit of scarcity. Now, there's a couple options out of this standoff. One option, I'll start with the husband. One option for the husband is he can flood the marriage with emotional connection. He can just lavish on the wife emotionally. He can give her tons of affection. He can just, tell her how amazing she is. And he can just lay it on thick for a good 30 days. Just flood the marriage with emotional nurturing, courting, and connection. And most likely, as long as there's no trauma history for the female, that's going to open her up sexually. So that's one option, husbands. If you're listening to this, You start and you flood the marriage emotionally and court your wife emotionally, and most likely that's going to open her up sexually. The other option, wives, is you can start and you can flood the marriage sexually. So for 30 days, ladies, if you're listening to this, flood your marriage sexually. Try to give as much sexual contact, sexual activity, flirting sexual. Try to do as much as you can for 30 days. You want to outdo your husband even more than he would even desire for 30 days and see what happens. Most likely, he's going to warm up and start courting you emotionally and wanting to spend time with you, and he's going to become more affectionate. So that's the other way to do this. So the wives can just flood the marriage sexually for 30 days. A third option is both of you can take steps towards the other, even if your bucket is low. I hate it when I hear a spouse say, I can't fill up your bucket because mine is low. What I want to hear them say is, my bucket's low, but I'm still willing to take a step or two towards filling yours. Because that's the right heart. Because if you get in this standoff where I can't fill yours until you feel mine, then that's a problem. Because both partners are going to have that attitude and it's going to feed off each other. So watch out for your attitude around this. If your bucket is low, your top need is low, don't let that to be an excuse for why you can't start taking steps to fill up your partner's. Obviously, when our buckets are low, it's harder to fill up our partner's bucket to make them feel loved in the area they need to feel loved. It's harder for sure, but it's not impossible. And it doesn't mean you need to do cartwheels filling up their bucket. It just means take some steps. So here's some steps. So I'm going to talk to the men and then I'm going to talk to the women. So for men, if you are listening to this and your need for sexual activity is low in your marriage and you're feeling like it's hard to give emotionally because sexually your tank is dry, here's 5 ideas for you to just start to take some steps towards your wife to fill up her bucket. Okay? One option, guys, is write her a note on all the reasons she's special to you. Think back through your relationship. Why did you marry her? Why did you choose her of all the women in the world? Remember that. What do you appreciate most about her? What are her qualities that you admire the most? Write all that down. Reflect on that. Ruminate on it. Let it soak into you, and then write that in a note and share that with your wife. Okay, that's a step in her direction to fill up her need for emotional connection and closeness. Another option, guys, number 2, is compliment your wife in front of other people. A lot of partners make the mistake of criticizing their partner in front of other people. That's the worst thing you can do. But instead, guys, the next time you are in a crowd or with some other family or friends, intentionally compliment your wife in front of other people. Because that shows respect, that shows admiration, and that's awesome. Okay, so that's a wonderful way to take another step towards filling her bucket for emotional connection and closeness. Third, guys, is carve out some extra time for doing a head-heart check every day. I've mentioned this in other episodes, but the head-heart is an ideal way to stay emotionally connected for couples. The head is your agenda, so that's the things you're doing throughout the day. That's on your day timer. Most couples talk about that already because they have to. The heart is the part a lot of couples don't talk about, and that's, are you mad, sad, glad, or fearful, and why? So mad, sad, glad, or fear, and why. Sometimes those emotions are going to be connected to your agenda. Sometimes it's just going to be an undercurrent that has nothing to do with your agenda. But every day, get in the habit of carving out time, putting away your cell phones, putting the kids to bed, turn off the TV, sit down, focus on your wife, and ask her what's on your head and heart. And then ideally she would ask you, and then you share what's on your head and heart. That's one of the best ways to stay emotionally close. It's going to keep you updated on each other's inner world. It'll show you what to be thinking about for each other, what you can text and follow up to one another. And when you feel like your partner is tracking you and they know what's important to you and they're following up and asking questions, that's one of the most powerful ways to feel cared for in a relationship. So guys, that's a wonderful way to take steps towards your partner, towards your wife, to fill up her love tank for emotional connection that she needs. is making sure you have a head-heart time every day to have the emotional connection time. A fourth idea, guys, is schedule a nice date with a babysitter. Take charge. Take the initiative. Call the babysitter. Call the restaurant. Call the activity center that you're going to do something and surprise your wife. Start having regular dates. Start dating her again. The very behavior couples do that makes them fall in love, they stop doing it after they're married for a while, and then they wonder why they're not still in love. So this is a great way to take another step towards filling her bucket of emotional connection, feeling special, feeling cherished. Schedule some dates. Okay? Take care of it. Coordinate it. Surprise her with it. Make it special. Think about what she would enjoy, not just what you would enjoy. A fifth idea, guys, for you is provide lots of affection with no strings attached. So many guys fall into a pattern where they only touch their wife when they want something sexual. And women catch on to that very fast, and then they start resenting your touch because they know you have ulterior motives. And it's not that your heart's in the wrong place. Us guys are very sexually wired, and so we think that way, and we're very physical. And so it makes sense. However, women don't appreciate it. Women want to feel your affection without sexual undertones, because then they can receive it without feeling like there's pressure to move on to something sexual. So guys, lean into touching your wife a lot when you want nothing else. Give her back massages, stroke her hair, hold her hand, put your arm around her waist when you're walking, rub her arm, find out what kind of touch she likes, ask her what kind of touch she likes. I always say this joke when I do my marriage conference where I had to learn how to touch my wife because she was touched in a way different than I was growing up. I was touched more coarsely and firmly from my mom growing up. She'd pat me or kind of pull me tight and squeeze. And my wife was touched with just really light tickles. And a lot of times in our marriage in the past, my wife would say, "You're not giving me any affection." And I'd say, "What do you mean? I'm squeezing you. I'm holding you tight." "What do you mean I'm not giving you affection?" And she would say, "I hate that. What I want is light tickles." And so I've had to learn how to touch my wife. It did not come naturally, and I still have to work at it because it's not my natural way to touch. So maybe that's you. Maybe you have to figure out how your wife likes to be touched and where she likes to be touched and how she wants to be touched. But explore this affection. Most women have a huge need for affection. When I work with couples, almost every woman says she needs affection. Never fails. And so by and large, that's a huge need for females without any strings attached. So guys, those are some steps for you. So if your sexual bucket is low, don't let that be an excuse to not take steps towards your wife, towards filling up her emotional bucket. And those are 5 ways to do so. So write her a note on all the reasons she's special to you. 2, compliment her in front of others. 3, carve out extra time for head-heart check-ins daily. 4, schedule a nice date with the babysitter. And 5, provide lots of affection with no strings attached. Okay, ladies, now I'm going to be speaking to you or the low libido partner in the marriage. So your position, most likely, is your emotional tank is very low and dry, so it's very hard for you to give anything sexually. But instead of making a standoff and saying, "I can't" or "I won't," consider taking some steps sexually towards your husband. And here's 5 ideas for you on how to take some steps sexually towards your husband to start filling up his tank on how he needs to feel loved, which is through the sexual contact, so that you can get out of this standoff. So one idea, ladies, listening to this, is consider start wearing lingerie to bed at night. Find some lingerie that you feel comfortable in and that you could sleep in, and that's practical. Not something that makes you get in bed and you slip right onto the floor because it's so slippery. some lingerie is like that. But find something you feel comfortable in and that you feel good in with how you look, and start wearing these outfits on a regular basis. As I'm sure you know, men are highly visual, and that would be a step in his direction because most men love sensuality and seeing their wife dress up in a sexy way. And so that's one way you could take a step towards him, is with what you're wearing. Second option, ladies, is consider texting your husband randomly the color of underwear you're wearing. Or text him a suggestive photo or a suggestive phrase or thought you're having that's sexual in nature. But use your phone as a way to flirt sexually with your husband. And you can do this based on whatever you're comfortable with. Some people are super racy and they really go for it. Other people are very modest and they do some mild sexual flirting. So think about whatever would feel natural for you and authentic for you, because you don't want to bend over backwards and feel inauthentic. But you also may need to push yourself just a little bit out of your comfort zone. Okay? Just a little bit beyond what you feel comfortable with might be a nice stretch, because that may communicate to your husband that you are coming in his direction sexually to start filling up his bucket. So consider suggestive texts or pictures through the phone. A third option for you ladies is, and this is more on the racy side, but schedule a dinner with your husband where you don't have your kids and you're out having dinner, and don't wear any underwear. And then sometime during the dinner, lean over to him and whisper in his ear that you're not wearing any underwear. Your husband's heart rate will double. I can guarantee it. It will double. That's a huge turn on for guys, is to hear things like that. And so that's just an option. You don't have to do that, and that may feel way too racy for you, and that's fine. But this is just an option, because this is an idea to take a step in his direction, even if your tank is low, your emotional tank is low, so you can get out of the standoff. A fourth option, ladies, is consider using your chest as a way to flirt with him. So for example, perhaps you can, when you have to move past him, rub your chest up against him. Or if you have to reach for something, rub your chest up against him. Use your chest, if you feel comfortable, to flirt with him. Because again, guys are so physical and so sexually wired that is going to get his attention, and that's definitely taking some steps in his direction, even if your tank is low. It's a great way to flirt with him. A fifth idea, ladies, is to think about a sexual fantasy that you've had in the past or you have right now that you would love to do with your partner. Okay, that you would love to act out with your husband. Think about a sexual fantasy, something that really excites you and would be really pleasurable for you and really enticing for you with your husband, and then write him a note about what that is. Write out your sexual fantasy about what that would look like with your husband and give him that note. He would eat that up. He would love that. Okay, so that's another option. So those are 5 for you women listening to this. If your tank is low emotionally, those are 5 ideas for you to take some steps towards your husband. So again, number 1, consider wearing lingerie to bed. Number 2, texting him suggestive photos or texts. Number 3, going out to dinner and whispering in his ear, you're not wearing any underwear. 4, rub your chest up against him when you're passing him or reaching for something. And number 5, write him a note on a sexual fantasy that you have about him and give it to him. Those are 5 options for you based on what you would feel comfortable with. So those are 10 tips, 5 for husbands, 5 for wives, that you both can start doing today. You both can start taking steps today to get out of the standoff mentality that unless you meet my needs, I'm not going to meet yours. That's a spirit of scarcity. Stop acting like that. It's not healthy. It's toxic. Get out of that mentality and start embracing the spirit of generosity and start taking steps and see how it impacts your relationship. Thank you for listening to the Marriage Steps podcast. For more marriage resources, go to my website, drwyattfisher.com. That's drwyattfisher.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your family and friends. And if you believe in my mission to reduce the divorce rate and would like to keep the Marriage Steps podcast on the air, please consider becoming a monthly supporter by going to patreon.com/marriage steps. That's patreon.com/marriage steps. Take care.